Well, welcome everyone to a special episode of the Your Morning Coffee podcast. It's a conversation with Lisa Hresko and Ian Harrison from A2IM. That's the American Association of Independent Music. And of course, they trace their origins all the way back to 1972 with NAIR. That was the National Association of Independent Record Distributors, of which I was familiar. A2IM is the U.S. Independent Music Coalition of more than 700 independent labels.
And they do a great job promoting growth, awareness, and opportunities for independent music through advocacy, education, and community. I recently sat down with Lisa Hresko, who was recently named COO, that's Chief Operating Officer of A2IM, and also now President of the Foundation of Independent Music. Also joining us was Ian Harrison, who you may know from his more than 2 decades at Hopeless Records. Ian recently succeeded our friend Dr. Richard James Burgess as CEO of A2IM. So now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Lisa Hresko and Ian Harrison from A2IM. Let it roll.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. Standing by. Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Lisa and Ian, it is good to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Jay.
Yeah, my pleasure. Before we dive in, give us a quick little introduction about who you are and a little bit of your background, because as I sort of prepared for this conversation, I was pretty impressed with both of you are very qualified to be doing what you're doing here, and I love your background in the industry. Let's start with you, Lisa. Talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Jay. And I have been at A2IM. It will be 9 years in February.
Wow.
So very pleased to be working with the indie community. And I am actually pleased to say, thinking about it, that I've been working at indie companies my whole life, except for a short stint at a mall job in college. But it's been wonderful to work with the independent community. A2IM has grown so much, and really love to be part of that independent voice. And I'm currently the COO of A2IM, and I'm also the president of the newly founded Foundation for Independent Music, which is a new educational arm specifically for the independent community.
I love that. I'm very involved in the educational side. That's near and dear to my heart. How about you, Ian?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be a part of the indie community for a long time too. I spent almost 21 years at Hopeless Records. I was part of the early team there, came in, Louis Posen, great leader in our community, founded that label, was nice enough to let me hang out as a young kid and help him and the rest of the team grow that company into something I think is very special and, epitomizes something good in our community. And, after 20 plus years, I was our general manager. I held lots of different roles, and I got to see a label evolve from, pretty early on to something that's, global and meaningful. And I think represents a lot of our community. And, after 21 years, this opportunity came up, and it felt like this is just the right way to serve the independent space. For me now, Hopeless is in a great place. There's lots of great leaders there. They don't necessarily need me at this point. So I feel like I'm better here. And, I've been a member of A2IM for a really long time. I've been to every Libera Awards. I've been, speaking at Indie Week for quite a while. I've been lucky to work with Lisa in a different capacity this whole time. So, I feel very fortunate, and not even that I'm stepping into something new, but just taking just another step in this indie journey.
Yeah, Hopeless is such a great label, and we've had Lewis on and had conversations with him, and Richard did our intro this morning for the podcast, which is
I was listening. Yeah,
he's such a badass. Well, let's dig right in. Congratulations on your new roles. First of all, for someone with no prior knowledge, how would you describe A2IM?
I'll go for this one. A2IM is the trade body representing the independent sector for recorded music. And we focus on four main things: advocacy on a governmental level, education, community, and creating commerce opportunities for our members. The short version.
As you mentioned, I mean, there's so much more. And Ian, you had just mentioned the Liberia Awards and Indie Week. I go out to Indie Week every year, and it's such a joy. The presentations are great, and the advocacy and the education, all of that is really great, but it's also just the people you bump into when you're waiting for lunch and you see in the lobby. It's such a great conference.
It does. It feels like a bit of a reunion to me every year, going and seeing, if you've been in this community for a while and you've been lucky to get to build those relationships, it's really nice to come and get to see what everybody's up to and have this, what at this point is, the main meeting place of the indies is Indie Week. And we're really happy to get to facilitate that.
Yeah. And this is for Lisa. You sort of touched on this a moment ago, but what are some of the operational initiatives that are really top of your roadmap this year?
I would say my biggest thought for A2IM is what serves our members. Always. Everything we do is driven by member value and returning the value of copyright to copyright owners. And operationally, it's the stuff you don't see. It's making sure your experience is smooth. I don't want anyone to have a roadblock to getting that information. It's kind of looking at how can we disseminate, whether it's information on advocacy that we're working on, or just simply creating better community events with a smoother way to get to that. So it's good. We're really focused on reducing friction between getting members what we want and introducing them to what we do.
Yeah. And who is this body, this indie body? Is it artists, labels, managers, distributors, public? Like, what's that group look like?
A2IM represents the recorded side. So largely independent labels, artists who own their own rights, who offer their own recording rights, who for us are labels. We represent them on a governmental level when we talk about rights owners. And then we have a portion of our membership we call associate members. And this group is for anyone who is involved in the independent music space, but isn't necessarily a label or a rights owning artist. These would be law firms, they're marketing agencies, they're the DSPs. So the idea is you can walk into A2IM as a brand new label, artist just trying to get started, and you can meet everyone who you have to deal with. You can find your royalty accountants, you can find your attorneys. The idea is a community is huge, right? The community isn't just labels, it's labels and those who work with them. And we see people kind of moving between that space too, right?
Yeah.
A lot of distributors are in our space, a lot of copyright owners who also do other things as well.
Yeah, and most of the music business is indie. If you look at Luminate's last, their year-end report, it's not even close. It's like 96%. It's an indie world out there. This one's for Ian. What is your top strategic priority for A2IM this year?
It's really about delivering value to members. Lisa touched on it there. And that's a variety of things. A2IM's meant different things to members over the years. We're facing different challenges all the time. So member value is top of mind. If you're going to be a part of this community, you should really get something out of it and feel like there's something for me here that's bigger and better than I can learn and grow into. So that touches on lots of things, but it's events. Our events are stronger than ever. Libera's and Indie Week are the place where people come to meet the indies, and that's going to just continue to grow and grow. And it's advocacy. We have a lot of stuff changing right now, and we are really the only significant advocacy voice for the indies that's going to speak up on all of these changing issues, whether it's the shift to AI, market consolidation, or anything else that gets thrown at us. We're in Washington all the time. We're in state houses. We're working with the other trade organizations to make sure that independent rights holders are represented just as well as anyone else in those conversations. And that doesn't just go for the government. It more so, it actually goes for partners. We're talking with commercial partners every single day about what independents want and need and value. And we're finding out what's coming down the pipe from them. What are they going to do that indies might not like? And we want to make sure that we're advocating for our community's interest at the very beginning and having those deep relationships so we can have those complex conversations that we know are going to come up.
I love that you're giving the small guy a voice, especially in Washington. Talk about some of those issues. We read a lot about AI today. What are some of the issues in Washington that you're talking about?
There are a couple of big ones, but the one that we're actually really proud of that we got a bill passed last year. We worked with the Recording Academy on the HITS Act, which is, yes, thank you. It is a tax bill, which sounds not very exciting, but the reality is it will deliver a lot of value back to our members and a lot of value back to anyone in the recorded industry. We're also working on some things coming down the pipe. We've been working on AMFA, the American Music Fairness Act, for a long time. This is the radio royalty on the recorded side. And this is, billions of dollars that the recorded side of the industry has not been paid for over 100 years. And we're, getting that would be life-changing. So we've been working on that for a long time with the Music First Coalition, with the Sound Exchange, the AFM, the RIAA, SAG-AFTRA, the Recording Academy. We have the Protect Working Musicians Act, which we worked on with the ARA and Representative Deborah Ross, which that's legislation that would allow independent artists to band together and collectively negotiate with large streaming platforms and AI developers without the constraints of antitrust laws. So these are some of the actual legislation. And then we're part of collective groups too, like the Human Artistry Campaign, which is a global coalition of over 70-ish creative organizations and unions that's looking to ensure artificial intelligence is developed ethically, respecting human intellectual property, and supporting rather than replacing the human arts.
AMFA is really near and dear to my heart, and people are shocked when I tell them that you're not paid in the United States when you're the performer, when your song's played on the radio. They pay on the publishing side, but not on the performance side. And I do predictions every year, and this year I put down that was going to pass. Oh, finally.
Would love it.
I had people reach out to me and go, you're dreaming, there's too big of a lobby against it. And I feel like this is one of those rare bipartisan things that people on both sides of the aisle say it's not really fair. And then you hear the argument, well, it's going to put radio stations out of business. You might hear that from the NIB, but it really isn't. It's a few $100s for a lot of these stations. And you mentioned, like billions of dollars on the backs of these performers. And a majority of these are, independent performers. And so that's just one of those things that you just mentioned that I think is you're making some progress on, because a lot of these issues in Washington, they take time, right?
Yeah, I think that's something people don't realize about advocacy is it is slow. It's slow, but it's incredibly impactful. And some of it is righting wrongs of years ago, which would be the case with the American Music Fairness Act. So we're really behind that and would love to see that pass. And again, returning value for generations to come.
What are some of the member services that you provide for the indies? I know you touched on some of them already, but if I asked you for your job description, you might give me 8 things, but you do like 80 things in a day. So what are some other things that you provide for the indie community?
Yeah, we have our flagship events, but we're also doing lots of stuff throughout the year, smaller meetups, significant amount of online education that I would expect to grow significantly over the next few years. Those are the few things that I would highlight.
Yeah. What about you, Lisa?
Yeah, and these come in different ways, right? Like we're right now putting together a kind of what to ask your tax preparer on the HITS Act this year, since it's new, that you can take with you. So education comes in many forms, right? Like we have members who have been doing their jobs for 50 years, and we have members who are just getting started. So kind of trying to understand what they are. But a lot of the value of A2IM, I think, is what I've always kind of called right person, right room. It's the community. It is being able to walk into a space and knowing that you're in a safe space, a vetted community of people who can help you take the next step. And whether that's participating in our mentorship program, whether it's, looking to attend one of our sync events for placement, a lot of what we do, we try to have a real impact. And that should be an impact on your business commercially. It should be an impact on your personal growth within the music industry. So we're constantly looking for ways that we can support our members as humans and as businesses.
Yeah, I love the education side of it because our business is complex by design. You both know publishing, masters, neighboring. I mean, it just seems like this was put together initially to confuse people. And I feel like one of your superpowers is sort of that demystifying the music business. Can you talk about your education initiatives?
Sure. I'll talk about the mentorship program, which I think is one of my favorites. We've served at this point over 800 individual members, and that is pairing them with a mentor. And it is manual. We spend a lot of time. Thank you to Emmeline McCourt on our team, who does an amazing job leading that group. Is we actually ask people what they're looking for, and we find a person in our community who wants to be the mentor and work together. And we've seen promotions, we've seen hirings, and one of my favorite comments we get out of that is often the mentors say to us, I learned more from them than I think they could have ever learned from me, because you have, sometimes you have generational interactions. You have, people who are working in spaces where maybe you would like to work or just like to learn more about this. So, thinking of everyone's questions are individual, and being able to answer those individual questions are really helpful to us. It doesn't devalue. I think that there's a huge value in kind of our larger scale educational systems like our webinar series as well. But definitely being able to get to the root of what's holding people back is, part of the independence, right?
I was a mentor 5 or 6 times as a member. I got a ton out of it, and I think it's one of the best things that we do to build community. And I'd agree with Lisa. I think I learned more than the people I was talking to. But it's nice to see them out in the industry, growing and thriving in different areas. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I love the mentorship part of it. Ian, talk a little bit about the challenges of an indie competing with a major. I've worked for both, and they both have their strengths and their weaknesses, but it comes down to the people on a lot of this. Some of the majors may have a little bit larger budgets, but I think today we can work smarter and not have to spend so much money. But you've done it. You've worked for a very successful, very cool indie label. Talk about those years and how do you compete with, the majors on this playing field?
I think it's always been really difficult. When I started, the challenges were a little different than they are now, but the indies have always had a little bit of an uphill battle. I think in some respects, indies have never had it better in terms of friction. If you have an idea, that the possibility that you could reach somebody has never been easier. And through my career helping build Hopeless, every time something like that hit the marketplace, an indie in our position was really able to level up, take advantage of the changes, learn about what was happening, innovate. Those are challenging times. Not everybody handles those things very well. Indies are kind of the experimental marketplace for a lot of those ideas. So you see lots of really amazing success come out of it, and you see some sad stories as well, which we're really here to try to smooth over and make sure we don't see as many of those. Right now, one of the biggest issues I think is really structural, because we can reach more people as indies, which is amazing. And we have some of the most sophisticated companies in our community. So the idea that these are smaller budgets or teams or less sophistication, I mean, some of the top songs, artists, and companies in the world are within our membership, and I would expect that to grow significantly over time. So, well, we do have small labels who are just starting out, or small labels who are representing just one artist or whatever. The things that our members need are all over the place.
Yeah. So, Lisa, how can A2IM help U.S. indies outside of the US?
Yeah, we've been, when I started at A2IM, I came from CMJ where I worked on some of our international programs. It's definitely something that is a key focus for us and has been for quite some time. So we work on international trade delegations, which is taking our members to places around the globe to better acquaint them, meet key players in the industry, help set up meetings. And I think it's accessibility. And I think a lot of these different territories are places where people would like to get involved, but maybe need some help, kind of whether it's cultural integration or whether it's meeting the right key partners to understand the market. So we've been working, particularly at Indie Week for many years now, to increase our international trade delegations coming to the US to make Indie Week really a global hub, a global marketplace for the independent space. And we've seen a huge increase in there. We've seen over 42 countries represented. And I would say that there's a pretty significant, about 20% of Indie Week is now international. And on the other side, it's a great place for them to meet the independent market in the US because everyone is here. It's the spot where you can, again, walk in the door and meet your partners in the US. So it's a trade, right? It's a bringing your information from the US, from New York, globally, and then bringing our friends from around the globe to the US.
Yeah, one of my favorite meetings at the last Indie Week was with a team from Japan, and we all met up, and there was, I think, 4 or 5 of them. We just had the greatest conversation. Of course, we had a translator, and some of them didn't speak English, but it just sort of speaks to your point about this being sort of a global thing. How do you collaborate with other trade bodies?
Yeah, we're talking to the other TAs all the time, whether it's collaborating on actual initiatives or just coordinating on the news of the day amongst the industry. I sit on the board of WIN, and I did before I took on this role as well. So I have some good experience with that group. They're doing a great job organizing the global voice for the indies, which I think is very, very important. I sit on the Sound Exchange board, which is also incredibly important for our community. We're constantly talking to the RIAA, Recording Academy, on and on and on. And, we share a lot of interest with these groups. We're largely looking to partner with everyone and advance the interests of artists and rights holders. Sometimes we don't agree. We're not always in lockstep on every single issue, but, our intent is to work with everybody. We all share, for the most part, the same mission.
Yeah, it's so important just to be at the table and having those conversations. One area that I think is so important today is leveraging data and sharing information. There's so many different platforms out there. Everybody sort of has their own homegrown systems. There's just so many data sources out there. And, how do you make it actionable? Do you work with these indies in either providing data or helping them to actually use data to help their business grow?
One way we've actually worked is, I know you actually just had Jamie Marconet from Luminate on your podcast, and Jamie's been a key player in something we're doing, which is our brand new A2IM Star Certification series. And this is a sales certification, working with Luminate, using Luminate data to verify sales. And this was designed at a lower threshold than the RIAA Gold, which allows for a space for the indies to have something to celebrate, to hang a beautiful plaque on their wall, and to celebrate milestones of 50,000, 100,000, and 300,000 sales. And that has been made possible by a great relationship with Luminate, willing to open up this data to us. But it's also helped us too. And if somebody submits and sees information is misaligned, we can get that corrected. So data is really important to us and to our members.
Yeah, I think other ways that were helpful in this space is connecting our members with data partners who can be helpful. In the indie landscape, our companies aren't going to have large internal data departments, most likely. And to be honest, they don't necessarily need them, but they do need partners who can help them do that work. So to some degree, that's a benefit of membership as well, being connected with an incredible amount of associate members who are doing work in this space, innovating, providing value to members. The other part that I think A2M could play a larger role in over time is, benchmarking, helping labels understand, am I normal? This is something we do lots every day, but I think we could do even more so in a more formal way where we can help everyone understand, are we facing these same challenges? What does this look like to you? There's obviously privacy and other concerns in there, but there is a shared amount of knowledge in this community, and people should learn from each other about the challenges everyone's facing.
Yeah, agreed. Now, you two have both been associated with A2IM for a long time, but you're new in these particular leadership positions. As you step in here, were there any misconceptions that you find from the indie community that you'd sort of like to correct?
I've worked here for almost 9 years. I'll let Ian take that one.
Oh, I don't know. Misconceptions. I thought the 2 stood for something different, but I don't know. I've been a part of this community for a long time. It's the most interesting thing for me is just having this different lens to it. I now have a window into a lot of different experiences that labels are having. I come from a label that has one type of experience, which is like relatively classic and kind of, maybe an idealistic growth pattern, versus what's possible today at times. But, I'm learning about all sorts of different labels and the challenges they face that I never encountered in what I did. And there's an incredible amount of new business models that are entering our world, which are very interesting and teaching people stuff, challenging everybody. I think that's fascinating. I want to help keep this community together as we grow. The future is independent. There's a lot of people coming into our community. I think that's largely a really great thing, but it also brings up some pretty big problems and challenges that we need to look out for. And, protecting independence is our mission. So we're going to keep an eye on that. But, I've never had a better window into what's changing or what's happening or the challenges people are facing. I think it's really fascinating, and we're here to help.
Yeah.
I think independent is broad, right? It's tiny one-person businesses, it's large businesses. Indie doesn't mean small, and it's also genre agnostic. And we represent the entire US, right? I'm here calling from New York, Ian's calling from LA, but there's a whole country in between that has amazing American music and global music. So it's kind of looking at ensuring a feeling of belonging in a wide space is so vital to what we do.
Yeah. As we sort of wind down here, if someone wanted to be a member, they wanted to learn more, maybe attend Indie Week, or where would you suggest people go to learn more about A2IM?
I think the obvious one is A2IM.org, the number 2. But our membership team is here all the time to answer any of these questions, as are we. And we actually welcome all inquiries, regardless of if people end up joining or not. But there's a lot that we can do. And there's a lot of different things that I think are less obvious. Like sometimes I think the biggest services of A2IM are just calling us and asking us a question. Part of what we do is we will find an expert in every area to get someone to talk to, even if we're not individually the expert. And, we encourage you to contact us. Yeah.
Love it. Who can join? Can anyone join?
Any label, any recording rights owner can join as a full member. And any business that functions within the music space can join as what we call an associate member. We lobby on behalf of recording rights.
Lisa, Ian, congratulations on your promotions, your new roles. I'm really excited to see what the next chapter is. I hope we can talk again. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Jay. Anytime.
Thank you so much, Jay.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.